What started as a tense evening with the Emir of Qatar took an unexpected turn when Princess Catherine intervened with a gesture that transformed the atmosphere. The Grand Hall at Buckingham Palace was alive with light and sound. Long tables stretched the length of the room, adorned with golden plates, tall glasses, and silver cutlery reflecting the chandelier's glow above. The setting was magnificent, just as it always is when the royal family hosts world leaders. Yet beneath the glittering surface, something else was unfolding. The guest of honor that night was Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar. At 45, he had already led his nation for over a decade. Those familiar with him describe a leader who was calm yet firm, someone who commanded respect and insisted that Qatar's voice be heard. Just days earlier, he had delivered a powerful speech at the United Nations in New York, condemning Israeli actions in Gaza. His words had resonated worldwide. That same intensity seemed to accompany him to London. For King Charles, the banquet was more than a formal event. Britain and Qatar shared strong partnerships in trade and energy. Qatar's Sovereign Wealth Fund owned significant assets across London, from renowned shops to office buildings. Ensuring the Emir felt respected was not merely polite, but essential for maintaining trust between their countries. Princess Catherine entered the hall with her signature elegance. She wore a flowing ivory gown paired with a diamond tiara once owned by the late queen. Since returning to royal duties earlier that year, after completing her cancer treatment, her presence carried added significance. Many viewed her as a symbol of hope, someone who could remain steady during difficult times. Initially, the evening unfolded smoothly. Guests engaged in polite conversation, glasses clinked softly, and gentle music played in the background. But as the meal began, the Emir's expression revealed unease. He had been seated several chairs away from the king, placed instead beside ministers and senior officials. Though seemingly minor, seating arrangements are crucial during state visits. The Emir leaned back with a tight expression. His aides exchanged whispered, concerned glances. Those nearby began to sense the tension. Even subtle signs of disrespect can escalate quickly among leaders. The room remained lively, but beneath the surface, strain was growing. Catherine observed from across the table. Known for her ability to sense discomfort, whether spotting shy children during school visits or anxious parents in hospitals, she could tell the Emir was unsettled. She chose to wait. It was never her style to act hastily or create a scene. When the first toast was made, glasses rose all around. Catherine then turned slightly toward the Emir, meeting his gaze with a warm, sincere smile, unlike the stiff, formal smiles often seen in official photos. With a gentle nod of her head, she raised her glass in his direction. Though subtle, the gesture carried great significance. The Emir paused, held her gaze briefly, then nodded and lifted his glass in response. The tension in his face softened, noticeable to those seated nearby. His aides relaxed, their concern easing. As the dinner continued, Catherine took opportunities to speak with him, steering clear of politics or business. Instead, she inquired about his family, engaging lightly but genuinely, demonstrating she had taken the time to learn what mattered to him. Gradually, the Emir began to relax. He spoke proudly of his children, a rarity in public, and smiled more, even letting out soft laughter. The atmosphere at their table shifted from tense to more comfortable conversation. British officials watched with relief. They knew how quickly such events could sour if a guest of honor felt sidelined. Yet here was Catherine, without a formal role or script, smoothing tensions through simple kindness and genuine warmth. By dessert, the Emir leaned forward, engaged in conversation with a senior minister nearby. The earlier frown was gone. Compliments about the banquet came freely, and his aides appeared satisfied. Everyone recognized that the princess's thoughtful gesture had changed the mood. Yet what she did next would have an even greater impact, one that captured the attention of the entire room. Though the first half of the banquet had been salvaged, Catherine understood the evening was far from over. State visits demand careful navigation, as every word, glance, and gesture can carry weight far beyond the palace walls. The emir was smiling now, but the earlier displeasure lingered beneath the surface. Catherine knew that to maintain goodwill, she needed to do more than just ease the moment. She had to affirm that his place at the table and his voice on the world stage were fully respected. The speeches began. King Charles spoke warmly of the friendship between Britain and Qatar, highlighting the deep connections between their nations. He praised energy cooperation, investments in British schools and hospitals, and the strong bond shared by the two royal families. Applause broke out as the king raised his glass once more. When the emir began to speak, the room fell silent. His English was clear, marked by a strong Qatari accent that lent gravity to his words. He thanked the king for the warm welcome, but went further, addressing fairness in global politics, the urgent need for peace in Gaza, and the responsibility leaders bear to protect families caught in conflict. His tone was steady and resolute, reinforcing his reputation as a leader who faced difficult truths head-on. Some guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Political speeches at state banquets could feel heavy, and not everyone expected such direct remarks amid the palace's opulence. Princess Catherine, however, maintained her focus on him. She nodded gently as he spoke, signaling that she was truly listening. Though a simple gesture, it carried great meaning for a man who valued being heard. When his speech concluded, polite applause filled the room. Yet Catherine sensed a divide. Some clapped out of obligation, others hesitated. She chose to bridge that gap. Leaning toward the emir once the applause died down, she softly said, "Your words remind us all that families, no matter where they live, deserve safety and peace." Though brief, her comment was thoughtful. The emir looked at her first with surprise, then appreciation. Her response neither dismissed nor diluted his message, but connected it to something universal: the importance of family. Known for his pride as a father, the emir felt that chord touched once again. The meal resumed with lighter dishes, and the tension lingering after his speech lessened noticeably. Later, as the formal music paused, Catherine joined a smaller group gathered around the emir. Steering the conversation away from politics and trade, she asked about Qatari schools. Having read about Qatar's substantial investments in education and sports, she openly praised those efforts. "It gives young people hope," she said, "when leaders prioritize schools and healthcare." The emir leaned in, speaking with renewed enthusiasm. Education was a source of great pride for him. He described new projects, scholarships, and the training of young athletes for international competitions. Catherine listened attentively, asking informed questions that showed her preparation. Her interest was genuine, not superficial. Observers nearby noted the natural connection between them. It was more than charm. It was built on knowledge and respect. Catherine demonstrated that she valued what mattered most to him beyond titles and politics. As the evening progressed, the emir's earlier insistence on recognition transformed into genuine praise. He spoke highly of the British royal family to his aides, particularly noting Catherine's grace and thoughtful demeanor. The man who had seemed ready to leave in frustration was now fully engaged and visibly pleased. British ministers, who had feared diplomatic trouble, breathed a sigh of relief. They quietly acknowledged that Catherine had achieved what even seasoned diplomats sometimes struggled with: earning respect through human connection rather than forceful debate. The banquet continued with music, toasts, and polite chatter. But the true story of the night was clear. Catherine had stepped into a tense moment and turned it around. Her simple words and subtle gestures reshaped the atmosphere. Yet the evening's most remarkable moment was still to come, something that would elevate the emir's praise even further, leaving the entire room captivated. Though the mood at Buckingham Palace had settled into balance, the night remained delicate. The emir, calmer now, still carried the weight of his nation's pride in every word. Princess Catherine understood that one misstep could undo all the progress. Every glance, smile, and pause mattered. Dinner was served smoothly, with silver trays gliding across the room. Fine china, polished cutlery, and sparkling glasses reflected the bright lights above. Catherine leaned slightly toward the Emir, showing she remained fully engaged. She mentioned his recent visit to Oxford, where he had met Qatari students studying science and medicine. The Emir's expression softened. He was proud of those students, many supported by scholarships funded by his government. Catherine shared that she had read about a Qatari student working on renewable energy projects linked to Britain's clean technology initiatives. "It's inspiring," she said warmly, "to see young people leading the way." The Emir laughed, a short but genuine sound. Around them, others noticed the change. The tension in his shoulders eased. Catherine's approach was simple yet effective. Highlight what mattered to him, show respect, and build connections that reflected positively on him and his country. King Charles, seated nearby, watched quietly. He didn't interfere, but his eyes expressed full confidence in his daughter-in-law's calm, steady handling of the situation. Known for his strong will, the Emir now appeared more open to listening. The conversation soon shifted to football, a topic close to the Emir's heart. Having hosted the FIFA World Cup in 2022, he was deeply proud of Qatar's role in the global event. Catherine joined in carefully, mentioning her children, especially Prince George, and how he had recently taken an interest in football. "He was very excited watching England during the Euros," she said, her tone light yet respectful. The Emir leaned in with amusement. "And does he support England only?" he asked, a playful spark in his voice. Catherine smiled. "He tries, but sometimes children pick heroes from all over. He has his favorites." This simple exchange carried weight, showing Catherine was willing to share something personal, something human, that transcended the formal setting of a state banquet. For the Emir, who valued family deeply, it struck a chord. At the far end of the table, other guests continued their own conversations. But it was clear the center of attention was this unexpected connection between the Princess of Wales and the Emir of Qatar. Later, the Emir revisited trade issues, his earlier frustrations resurfacing but in a lighter tone. He spoke about Qatar's desire for more equal treatment in energy contracts. Catherine listened attentively, nodding at appropriate moments. She didn't argue or attempt to solve the issue directly. Instead, she repeated her earlier tactic, emphasizing shared values. "Your Majesty," she said clearly and calmly, "the United Kingdom takes its partnerships seriously. It's not just about numbers. It's about building a future together." The Emir paused, regarding her with fresh respect. This was no empty courtesy. She showed that his concerns were heard and valued, without making political promises beyond her authority. It was a delicate balance, and she managed it skillfully. By dessert, the atmosphere had fully warmed. Sweet dishes of fruit and tarts were served, and the Emir no longer seemed restless. Guests nearby relaxed, engaging in livelier conversation. Soft music from a string quartet filled the room. Catherine leaned back gracefully and glanced around the hall. She saw how the evening had transformed. What might have been an awkward moment for the palace was now a story of diplomacy carried out on a personal level. The Emir's aides nearby exchanged looks, clearly surprised by how swiftly their leader's demeanor had shifted. Known for his firmness and resolve, the Emir was now openly laughing and nodding in conversation with Catherine. The issues still mattered, but instead of being expressed as frustration, they had become points of respectful discussion. The princess had not only changed the Emir's mood, but transformed the entire atmosphere of the hall. Catherine had prepared carefully, but state banquets were long affairs, and pride could flare up again at any moment. Still, she maintained her steady composure. As the evening progressed, the Emir surprised everyone with a remark that shifted the tone further. Relaxing in his chair, his gaze fixed on Catherine while the banquet's chatter continued. Throughout the night, she had led their conversation with patience and grace. Now, he revealed what had been on his mind from the start. He cleared his throat and lowered his voice just enough to draw attention from nearby guests. "Britain has always spoken of partnership," he said evenly and plainly. "But sometimes I feel Qatar is expected to give more than it receives. That isn't fair." The table fell quiet. His words were firm yet polite. touching directly on the source of earlier tensions. A few aides shifted uncomfortably. King Charles remained calm, but observant, allowing Catherine room to respond. Leaning in slightly, Catherine replied evenly, "Your Majesty, I understand your point. Respect must be mutual. I believe tonight shows that your voice is truly valued here." The Emir studied her closely. He wasn't accustomed to such a straightforward, sincere response from a royal. Many might have sidestepped the issue with vague reassurances. Catherine had acknowledged his concern without excuses, and that caught his attention. Reading the silence around the table, Catherine continued. She spoke of Britain's deep connections with Qatar, not just in business, but through people. She mentioned the many Qatari families who call London home, the students attending British schools, and the doctors trained in UK hospitals. "That's more than trade," she said gently. "It's trust." The Emir's expression softened once more. Leaning forward, he answered in a tone less sharp. "You speak honestly, Princess. That is rare." For a moment, the tension dissolved. Other guests relaxed, quietly relieved. Catherine had not avoided the issue. She had met it head-on, with respect. The conversation moved on smoothly. She shifted the topic to lighter subjects, asking about the Emir's plans to enhance Qatar's cultural presence through museums and art. He brightened, sharing his vision of turning Doha into a global cultural hub. Catherine listened attentively, mentioning her visits to art galleries with her children, naturally linking family life to his ambitions. The Emir chuckled, clearly pleased. "You remind me that leaders are parents too. Perhaps the world forgets that sometimes." Those nearby exchanged smiles. The once tense mood had softened into warmth, with laughter breaking through. What began as a demanding tone from the Emir was slowly becoming open admiration. As the night went on, speeches were given. King Charles offered a thoughtful address about friendship between nations, in his usual measured style. When the Emir stood to speak, the room held its breath. His sharpness from earlier had softened. Standing tall, he spoke not of grievances but of mutual respect. He praised the palace's hospitality, Britain's history, and the warmth shown that evening. He even thanked Catherine directly for her kindness during their exchange. His words earned applause. King Charles nodded quietly in approval, but it was Catherine who received the most subtle recognition. Guests whispered about how the Princess of Wales had transformed the mood through calm conversation and a personal touch. After the speeches, the Emir returned to his seat, visibly lighter than when he arrived. The sharp edges of his earlier comments had softened into admiration. His aides, tense for much of the evening, now appeared more relaxed. Catherine did not seek attention. She resumed her composed posture, smiling politely and continuing the meal. Yet everyone present knew what had happened. The princess had turned pointed demands into gracious praise. As music swelled and the evening neared its end, Catherine's night was not yet over. One final exchange remained, one that would leave a lasting impression far beyond Buckingham Palace. The banquet was winding down. Plates were cleared, music softened, and guests prepared to rise. The Emir had surprised the room by shifting from criticism to praise in his speech, but it was Catherine's presence beside him that held the evening together. As the Emir stood, he turned to her with a rare look of gratitude. Though his aides were ready to escort him, he paused. "Princess," he said quietly, "you reminded me tonight that respect is earned, not demanded. For that, I thank you." Catherine smiled gently, nodding modestly. It wasn't her style to claim credit, but those nearby heard clearly. The Emir had been moved. Then came the unexpected moment. As the Emir reached for his coat, Catherine touched her chest with one hand and extended the other toward him. It wasn't a formal handshake, but a simple, warm gesture of goodwill. The Emir paused, then placed his hand over his heart in return, mirroring her. The room fell silent. Cameras clicked softly from the far side of the hall. What could have been remembered as a tense night was sealed by this gesture of mutual respect. King Charles, watching nearby, gave a small approving smile. He understood how fragile such moments were. Catherine had done more than soothe a guest. She had strengthened a delicate bond without grand words. As the Emir exited, he spoke once more for all to hear. Britain has shown friendship tonight. May this spirit guide our partnership forward. His words echoed warmly through the hall. Even those who had worried earlier nodded in agreement. When the doors closed behind him, the atmosphere felt lighter than it had all evening. Guests began to converse freely, praising the princess's role. Some noted how she listened instead of rushing to respond. Others admired her focus on shared values rather than conflicts. For Catherine, praise was not the goal. She rejoined Prince William, who was chatting with other guests, quietly asking about their children. "George will want to know if it all went well," she said with a soft laugh. A reminder that behind the tiara and formality, she was still a mother thinking of her family first. In the days that followed, the story spread. Photos of the Emir and Catherine's shared gesture circulated quickly. Commentators noted how a tense moment had been transformed into warmth, not through political speeches, but through human connection. Reports from Doha echoed the change. Newspapers praised the Princess of Wales for showing genuine respect to their leader. For Qataris, it mattered deeply that their Emir was listened to in such a public setting, preserving dignity far from home. Diplomats also recognized the significance. A senior Foreign Office official remarked, "Sometimes diplomacy happens in meeting rooms with papers, but sometimes it happens in small gestures at the dinner table." That night was one of the latter. Catherine said nothing publicly about the event, continuing her work on early childhood initiatives, visiting schools and charities in the following weeks. But those present at Buckingham Palace would never forget the night her calm presence shaped the outcome of a state banquet. It revealed the unique role she played. Not elected or a politician, she represented her country with humanity and care. Where others raised voices or stood firm with words, she demonstrated the power of listening in one graceful gesture. Thus, the story of that night endured, not as conflict, but as understanding. Guests who entered uneasy left admiring. The Emir, who arrived with demands, departed with respect. And Catherine, who never sought the spotlight, became its center. The banquet ended as it began, under Buckingham Palace's golden lights. But thanks to one princess and one simple gesture, its memory would shine far brighter than expected, reminding us that sometimes the smallest acts leave the strongest mark. What do you think of Catherine's approach with the Emir that night? Do you believe small gestures can truly shift the tone of major events? Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear them. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, check out the video on your screen. You'll enjoy it.